it was a similar kind of timeline that we had for Mud in terms of, production to the production dates to the Cannes dates. So we knew it was possible because we had done it with Mud. But Mud felt very last minute, like every minute went into making that film possible to be ready for Cannes. But this film was kind of, it just clicked, it just fell together. It wasn't that experience of, oh my gosh, it's 2.5 hours long. What 30 minutes are we going to take out? The length kind of fell in. The story fell in. I think we removed one small scene. It was very much representative of what was in the script. And I just felt very comfortable with it. And so I was able to go on this insane press tour for Midnight Special. I feel like I talked to everybody in every city. And meanwhile, kind of checking back in on the weekends with Loving. And again, similar to the screenplay, like I would go back to it and just say, it's really good, like let's take out a few seconds here and a few seconds there, but it's, I don't know, I think it's really good. And then, we finally showed it to the financiers and it got picked up in Berlin because we showed the first 6 minutes and Focus bought it out of Berlin. And I'm like, this never happens, this has never happened to me. And before you know it, it's like we're in LA finishing Loving, and then we're here in Cannes, and now it premiered. Maybe it was an undue burden that I put on myself, but I felt like I needed people that resembled these real people. And Ruth was the first one. To be honest, we started auditions before I went into pre-production on Midnight Special. I was randomly out in LA, and they were like, well, let's just see, let's see who's out there. And Francine Maisler, who's an incredible casting director, she'd worked with me since Mud, she brought Ruth in, was the first person she brought in. And Ruth had, I didn't know it at the time, but she'd become obsessed with the documentary. And she just poured over that footage and really, she sat down and started to perform. And, it wasn't an impersonation. It was an embodiment of this character. And I had done no work with her, It was kind of hard after she did her first, take. It was like, I'm supposed to give her some feedback, because in an audition, you want it to feel like there's some communication happening. So I said like one thing, she's like, oh, okay, and then did it again and was still great. And we looked at each other after she left and we're like, I guess we'll see some other people. And, we saw a few others just, I don't know, for kicks, but the decision had really been made the moment she opened her mouth and started to perform. Joel and I had already met about Midnight Special. He was already lined up to do Midnight Special, but I didn't know him very well. And as we started to work on that film, he's obviously Australian, and he was playing a Texas State Trooper in my film. So we talked about accent and dialect, and we had found a person in the Errol Morris documentary, The Thin Blue Line, and we modeled his accent off of this detective from The Thin Blue Line, and I saw how amazing he was at building this voice out for this character. I live in Texas. I thought he did quite a good job. And because I'd been listening to Richard Loving, he had a very distinct voice. This Virginia accent was very particular, partly from the region and partly from the period. The accent at that point hadn't been diluted by cable television and the internet. The accents were really pretty strong. And I thought it made sense to reach out to a foreign actor because they would have to go through the mechanics of working with this voice and this dialect. And I was so impressed with what he did on Midnight Special that I thought he could handle this voice in Loving. Not to mention, you kind of close one eye and imagine him with a short cropped hair and bad teeth, and you're like, he kind of looks like Richard Loving, actually, The interesting thing about Richard and Mildred Loving and their story, and what made me, again, not feel fraudulent in participating in it, is that their story involves topics of race and marriage equality and equality in general, but it doesn't feel like they're preaching a specific point. Their lives are an example of that point, and I think that made me more comfortable to say, all right, just by benefit of making this movie, people are going to talk about equality, but but let's just make the film about these people. Let's concentrate on their behavior. Let's concentrate on just these very small moments in their lives that add up to the emotional weight of their entire life. We shot this in Virginia. You know, we went to the actual courthouse where they were tried and the jail that they were housed, and you know, the community that they grew up in. So these, you know, in fact, the scene where you know, he's bought her this land to build her this home, it's literally a minute's drive from where they lived in exile and hiding, and so you felt this weight. And I would say 98% of the people in the community were extraordinarily supportive. Every once in a while you get somebody in a location scout that'd be like, I don't want to be involved with that. But that was, I mean, it really was a minority. I think if we're going to communicate with people who disagree with us, we can't just say our opinion louder. I think we have to show them the humanity behind these issues, and I think that's what loving does, because nobody can watch their story and argue that they had a point of view about the whole thing. They aren't preaching to you, they're just showing you. They're showing you what love is like, and I wanted the film to be like that.